These are the miscellaneous bits of a 3D printed shrine anchorite for Trench Crusade. And this is a little plastic statue of the Mother Mary I bought on eBay. And I'm going to combine these together to make a Mother Mary statue shrine anchorite for my nun-based Trench Crusade Trench Pilgrims Warband. My name is Adristea, and welcome to another kit bashing video. As always, the first step to any Trench Crusade conversion is a little bit of blasphemy. So I tried sawing this with my saw, but it just didn't work, so I had to take my plastic cutting rotary tool for my Dremel and cut Mary in half. I'm doing this, obviously, because one, she's gonna have robot legs, so why does she need these lower legs? And also that big ball had to go either way. And then also she would just be way too tall. This is already taller than a normal shrine anchorite, which I don't care about, but if it was even more ridiculously tall, it would kind of look dumb, more so than anything else. Now, as a big, giant war machine of trench warfare, she of course needs a power source. This is the backpack from the normal shrine anchorite, as well as the legs, so that she can ambulate around, stomp on some heretics. So, I get those glued on. They're pretty simple. There's a bit of a gap between the torso and the hips, but I cover that up later. I take a quick break before anything else to check if the legs are going to fit on the base as planned. I could only get a 50mm trench base topper, and I thought, oh, I'll put it in the center and surround the rest with AK mud, but it ends up really just not fitting. So I go on and I make my own out of coffee stirs and mud, and it's pretty simple. It's flat, it doesn't have much detail, but it adds a nice texture to it and makes it look like they're walking through trench boards. Note of warning, don't do what I did and use super glue for this. I legit had to leave my room multiple times throughout this process because of the pure amount of super glue I was exposing myself to, with windows open and fans on in the middle of the winter. Use PVA glue when working with wood bases like that. I need super glue for the rest of the model, but be smart. Be smarter than me. It's finally time to start gluing the body parts together, mostly the legs and the torso. As for the arms and stuff, I took this opportunity to drill into everything I was going to be pinning, so I wouldn't have to again later. I then take a bit of paperclip and use that to attach the bits together. Once I have that nice and strong with a good pinned connection, I do the same getting the arms attached after playing around with where I want them to be attached. I already put the little pins in the shoulders to like determine where I wanted them. I do have some issue with them breaking free again later, but that's actually because of the material they were printed in. It has kind of like a weak lattice interior to make it lighter and save material, which meant the pin wasn't actually entirely sturdy. So in the future, I probably would have used a stronger plastic or even a resin. Later, you will also see that it has a texture on it. I wish I had like a Tamiya plastic paste or something that I could have used to grime it up, give it a rougher like metal texture, rather than this 3D printed texture, but I didn't have it at the time. Now I have some Astro Granite I probably could have used, but basically the material has faults, but this was like an easy solution for me to get it for this bash. So always, if you want higher quality, pay for higher quality, and if you just want something you can throw on the table, don't bother with that. Another downside of all the super glue was all the super glue activator. I think that lent to my headache. I don't know why I'm adding like this little story time in, but I guess just while you're watching it, remember, be careful, do this in a better ventilated area. I do this in my room because it's where all my recording stuff is, and I think like big heavy projects like this I actually have to take out of my room because I don't feel safe sleeping with this much super glue and activator in the air. Next up is the weapon. This is the sword from the Saint Celestine like statue that came in that one, I think it's a Kill Team set, but it was also just used to be, I think, its old big thing. So I glue that in where the mace would be. Once again, I pin it, and then it, kind of breaks a little bit, and I have to fix it, and this is kind of a recurring problem, again, with the quality of the printed material. I also use the cheesecloth method to give it a little bit of, cloth to cover up mostly that seam, as well as give it more of a cloak. I started by super gluing that on, but then I use a PVA glue to bring it all down, help it keep its shape, and give it some rigidity. I then glue it to that base we worked on earlier to get it really more stable and make sure everything works out. It's finally time to enchainify it even further, because what is Trench Crusade? Much like Chaos in Warhammer 40k, if not chains everywhere. It's so weirdly kinky, I guess. This one, I wanted to just add a little detail to the back, as well as reinforce those joints on the arms I said kept breaking. So I kind of made a harness coming from the back belt that goes over and then wraps around the arms. Putting on these chains, the handle for the sword broke again, so I wrapped a bunch more chains around it to reinforce it with a smaller size like link. But I think it also really adds to the aesthetic. I then add a bunch of bits to it to help bedazzle her out. However, it doesn't catch really well on camera, so you'll see it in the next frame. So those last bits were from the Exorcist, but I think the Sister's Rhino is just as good for Trench Crusade. As you can see on my Ward of Tumors, I used a bunch of the reliquaries and shoulder shields and everything on him, and it really adds that kind of like gothic vibe. I think Sisters are in general great for everyone in Trench Crusade. So these like Rhino bits are perfect. Just all the shoulder shields, the details, the reliquaries. One of my favorite things about decorating Trench Crusade is you can be just so gaudy with it. Like, everything is going to be covered in relics, and it just fits. If it looks like too much, you haven't done enough yet. Like, you need it to be ridiculous. And if you're enjoying this, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps out. So on Ian of Battle's most recent video, I saw him like burn a cloak a little bit at the edge to get rid of the wispies, so I brought this downstairs and did it with what we had in the kitchen, which I think has helped clean up some of the issues. It's then time to make this a little more grimdark. I have a great collection of disembodied hands and legs from Mungo's Miniatures, a good friend of the channel. Find him on Etsy, and I thought, you know what? Heretic limbs should be put on display, much like statues where they would hang hands of thieves. So she's got some thief hands hanging from her belt. She's got legs of heretics that were probably blown up by mines and stuff, you know, to really strike fear and like show like this is God is seeing your sins. So I made just a few changes. I added some of these candles up here. I wanted to put more 3D printed candles, but I couldn't find mine. I gave some disembodied hands and a foot, just, you know, some other fun stuff. And then here I made a barbed wire crown. I'm just curling two pieces of wire next to each other and then cutting out tinier bits of wire and sticking it out, so it's got both the crown look and the barbed wire look. But yeah, I think with all of that, she is finally ready to start painting. To start painting off, I covered the entirety of her with a layer of, I think, brown violet, or maybe it was Verde Alemán World War II. Both are Vallejo. It was one of those two kind of more grayish greens. Actually, it may have even been Orc Flesh from Citadel. I don't quite remember. But I cover all of that because I want it to look kind of like old moss and stuff built up on the statue and verdigris under the brass limbs. So I was just getting that as the base coat to kind of make sure everything got covered. Once that's done, I work specifically on the statue, which is a mix of grays. First, I cover it with a dark gray, Then I kind of dry brush on a lighter gray, and then I pump that up even further with a nearly white color just to hit the edges. I'm just dry brushing it because I like that kind of scratchy texture. A little bit of edge highlighting later, especially on the face, but to make it look like a nice worn old stone statue that has been repurposed into a holy mech as times get more and more dire. I then do the same stone for a lot of the bits that I added to her, the reliquaries, the what look like tombstones, altars, because I forgot to do them the first time. So I get those done, and then we move on to the chains. The chains are pretty much all metal. The sword is metal, like a silver metal. Everything else is going to be brass, so I start with just like the silver stuff that's going to be rusted anyway, so it's okay if it gets a little messy. Next is the brass color using Tinny Tin by Game Color. I guess that would be Vallejo if it's Game Color. I don't even know where I got these Vallejo paints. I just kind of found them in a drawer one day, but their metallics are beautiful. I use this to cover up pretty much all of the body, including the supports on the Catherine wheel, and a few of the reliquaries and shields I haven't painted yet. Next up is the whites and creams. This includes the sheep or the lamb hanging from the belt, of course, symbol of Jesus, the bones and the reliquaries, the hanging body parts, and of course the cloth that's actually wrapped all around them. This is pretty simple. I come back and I clean this part up a lot, but right now I'm just really getting those base coats on, really helping separate. I always tend to paint by getting as many base coats on and then refining with highlights and shadows and cleanup all at once. It's just how I do it. I think part of it is I still need better brush control as a painter, so rather than paint one thing to perfection and then accidentally paint over that later, I can just get the basics on, and then once I dial into more detail, I'm less likely to overspill onto stuff. This is when I do all of the dark browns. This is the wood and the body parts. I didn't actually start with the bright colors in that. I start with a darker color to make them look a little more decayed, and then I will brighten it up later in future steps. Now I start with the washes. These are kind of muddy flesh washes, the Agrax Earth's Shade, some pallid bone on the bone, just a bunch of washes I kind of slap everywhere, specifically on the skin and a lot of the cloth and stuff, really to muck it up and add more color. Then we're on to the red. The red is used in a lot of the shoulder shields. It's used for blood on the body parts and the lamb. I use it for some freehanding on some of the plates. I really put it everywhere as the highlight color. If there's a symbol of a heart, it becomes red. If there's a fleur-de-lis, it's usually in red. A lot of the crosses are red. And yeah, I really have that. I want it to kind of look bloody, but also feel very like, I don't know, nuns I associate with red for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah. I then also do a cheeky little freehand on this strap. Rather than name the machine or call out a saint, I'm giving all the credit to Big J. I'm writing Jesus across that, and yeah. This is a Jesus machine. Mary, Mecha Mary, Jesus machine. Finally is a little bit of gold detailing just to really cause stuff to pop and make it feel a little more holy and not completely destitute. Some of the hinges, some of the details, some of the embossing, I just kind of put it around, really to just make it all look like, yeah, this was taken from a church that was once very well decorated, but unfortunately you just can't live with that anymore. You gotta put these things to use in the trenches. It's now time for Grimdark in a bottle, and I don't mean Streak and Grime, the other Grimdark in a bottle, and that is Dirty Down Rust, Verdigris, and Gore. So I keep those, I warm them up, I shake them heavily, as you have to do for all of them, and for the thicker ones like Gore and Moss, you sometimes have to stir them too. I cover all the silver and rust, I cover all the brass and Verdigris, and I cover, well, you'll see where I put the Gore.